At this point in the season, the flukiness conversations are no longer relevant. This Green Bay Packers defense is just plain good. Plus, our pal Tyler Dunne joins us on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. This episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. At various points in this season, there have been conversations on this show and other places about the sustainability of the quality of the Packers offense. They were doing well in things like EPA per play, but because the success rate was not great, there were concerns. Too reliant on turnovers, too reliant on negative plays for this defense to be sustainably good. That conversation is over. And in fact, later in the year, the last few weeks, when they have not been relying on a ton of turnovers, this defense has been the best it's been all year. Right now, sixth in weighted DVOA, which accounts for the teams that are playing the best lately. Here are the teams ahead of the Packers in weighted DVOA right now. Houston, one of the best defenses all year long. Philly, one of the best defenses all year long. Denver, one of the best defenses all year long. Minnesota, one of the best defenses all year long. And Detroit, one of the best defenses all year long. The Packers in weighted DVOA, ahead of Baltimore, ahead of Pittsburgh, ahead of the Chargers. Teams that, by narrative, by notoriety, have better defenses than Green Bay. But that's just not the thing anymore. The Packers are 9th in DVOA defending the pass, 8th defending the run. There are only 5 teams in the league, top 10, defending the pass and the run. Only 5. The Packers are one of them. All of them are going to the playoffs. And 3 of them are in the NFC North. It's crazy. And I went back and I looked. Wow, are they doing anything particularly interesting compared to last year with the blitzes? No. In fact, they're not even blitzing at a league average rate. Are they playing a bunch more man coverage? No, they're not. What they're doing is they're mixing coverages extremely well. Cover 3 is their most used coverage, but they're not even at 40% in terms of usage. They've come down on the cover 2 rate. A little more trust in Keyshawn Nixon, a little more trust in Carrington Valentine. They still get to these interesting inverted cover 2 looks. They'll show pressure and bring 4, but it's not the 4 you think. They are one of the most simulated pressure teams in the league. It's like they watched the tape of Houston and Minnesota and said, hey, let's do a lot of that. But with the injuries to Jair Alexander, with the question marks with the pass rush, which, by the way, has been much better since they traded for Preston Smith, oddly enough, or traded Preston Smith away. Brenton Cox has been really good. Lucas Van Ness has taken off. Carl Brooks, Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark playing his best football. Rashawn Gary playing his best football. Just since the bye week, 4.5 sacks. They look like a more connected defense. All of the things that, I'll be honest, I was dubious of when Jeff Hafley was like, well, we're just unveiling this thing slowly. And they're adjusting. And the players, they're finally getting comfortable in what we're asking them to do. It's just sort of like, well, I still have what I think are fair criticisms of some of the game plans. They were slow to adapt to what the Bears were doing. And by the way, it was predictable what the Bears would do with a new offensive coordinator. I still didn't love the plan in week 1 against Jalen Hurts, but that's a long time ago now. How can you not like a performance against a combustible Seahawks offense where you dominate them really for the entire game? They gave up some plays in the middle of the field. Their middle of the field defense has come back to the pack a little bit, but they're still top 10 defending in the middle of the field. They're still top 3 defending the deep ball. You do not create explosive passes on this team. You just don't. And I do think there is prudence in the way that this team approaches playing defense. And we've talked about this a number of times this year, this Joe Barry-esque, and I shudder to even invoke that name, but I think it's a fair way of framing it. The idea that they want you to go 10, 12, 14 plays is still in the DNA. But what they have efforted to do is, rather than play a passive version of that, it's a much more attacking version of that with a priority on creating turnovers. They had 2 interceptions against the Seahawks and dropped 2 interceptions. Carrington Valentine had one in his hand before he got one later. Edgerrin Cooper had one in his hand before he got one later. You have 7 sacks. Those are hugely impactful plays. Pressures are better than nothing, but sacks are better than pressures. I know people like to twist my words on this and make it seem like I believe pressures are better than sacks. That's not true. Pressures are better than nothing. And if you have 60 pressures and 8 sacks, that's better than 40 pressures and 10 or 12 sacks in terms of the value you're generating for your defense. But the Packers are getting the sacks now. They're generating one-on-one wins. And they are really still trying to fit these pieces together. Oh, Jair Alexander's out this week. Oh, Keyshawn Nixon, Javon Bullard's out now, so you got to go back into the slot. Carrington Valentine and Eric Stokes, you guys have to now play, and you've got to play against one of the best trio of receivers in the league against a very competent quarterback for most of the game. Then it was Sam Howell, who is very much not a competent quarterback. Jeff Hafley has changed week to week how he approaches different teams. And while I don't love some of the deployment of personnel, I made that clear. The Edgerrin Cooper stuff, I don't understand it. I wrote this on Monday on our Leap newsletter. Edgerrin Cooper has become undeniable. The playmaking, and now they're publicly, Chris Collinsworth talked about the Packers saying, we think he's going to be a star. Well, if you think that, and he's producing at the level he is, the highest graded defender in the NFL by Pro Football Focus last week. I know your mileage can vary on PFF grades. They are valuable on the margins. If they think you're really good, you were probably pretty good. And if they think you were really bad, you were probably pretty bad. Edgerrin Cooper played about as good a football game in 34 snaps or whatever it was as especially a rookie, but any player could play. Forget defensive rookie of the week. He deserves to be defensive player of the week. An honor, by the way, he's already won. And he changes so much about what this defense can be because his blitzing is so much more explosive than the other guys. Like Quay Walker athletically is on his level, but as a blitzer, their instincts, their movement skills, their feel is not close. Their closing speed, their explosiveness, Edgerrin Cooper as a spy. They'll just spy him on third down and say, okay, if the quarterback breaks the pocket, go. And he does and creates a pressure. The interception that he had and the near interception that he had on a zone drop where he reads the quarterback, feels the pass catcher break in behind him and just sits on it, just feels it, slides into position to make the play, reads the quarterback's eyes, understand you're probably getting someone breaking in behind you because you feel that guy there. Similar to what we talked about with Jordan Love and feeling the pressure. You feel that defender. It's a spatial awareness thing. Something, by the way, that certain other linebackers on this team really struggle with. Cooper was not asked to do that in college with any sort of regularity, but he's doing it now. And it is changing the complexion of this defense. This is now a borderline elite defense. There are really only 2 elite defenses this year. By the way, the Packers have played both of them and scored on both of them, Houston and Philly. If you believe things like DVOA, EPA per play tells a slightly different story. According to EPA per play, there's really only 1 elite defense. It's Denver. But Denver, Minnesota, Houston, Philly, those are the teams. Again, the Packers have played 3 of those 4. The defensive schedule the Packers have played is crazy. But they are playing their best football now, and they might get Jair Alexander back this week. And Matt LaFleur hinted that although Quay Walker might not play this week, Javon Bullard is going to get a chance to practice and prove he can play. Extra day. Home, no travel. And if he doesn't, you have to think that if they're giving him the shot to play this week, there's a chance he can play next week. And the same for Jair Alexander, who hasn't faced off against Justin Jefferson in a game in like 3 years. No, since 2022. 1 game though. Did the gritty. We remember what happened. We remember. Vikings fans, do you remember what happened? I think you do. Tyler Dunne wrote this awesome piece about Sean Rhyan, one of, as you know, everydayers know, one of my favorite Packers, one of my favorite prospects in that draft, that 2022 draft. I was giddy that the Packers drafted him. And Ty wrote a great piece about him. We're going to talk to Ty about that, a mentality change in this team, a crowded NFC playoff picture, all that is coming up on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The playoff action is almost here. Get in on all of it. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. You could place that $5 bet on the Packers, who are now minus 1,000, 10-1 favorites to win on Monday night, 13.5-point favorites. Yikes, Scoob. But just because you're getting 10-1, $5, like again, not normally something you might want to do, but in this case, if you're getting the $150 bonus bets just because the Packers won, seems like you're not really risking much at all. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode also brought to you by the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back with the newly expanded 12-team format. It's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that, of course, you love. Why wouldn't you? TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the the Southern Methodist University Mustangs, or the SMU Mustangs, battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Joining me now back again for what feels like the millionth time, our pal Tyler Dunne from Go Long. Go check out Tyler's excellent work along with Bob McGinn over at Go Long TD. It's great to have you back repping Syracuse football for those of you who can see us on YouTube here. Tyler, I'm not sure anyone since the 2022 draft has said more words about Sean Rhyan than I have. I loved him as a prospect coming out. I was thrilled when the Packers drafted him and frustrated when he was not getting opportunities early on. There is one anecdote in particular that I've seen a lot of people mention, and that is the bracelets. Can you tell for those who did not read, and please go, people get a chance to go read it, but tell us about the bracelets.
Yeah, so in conversation with Sean Rhyan, this entire time, it's hard not to notice the 2 bracelets around his wrist. You know, on one wrist, he's got a watch that's probably worth more than most things I own. The guy has style. He's got style, man.
Oh, yeah.
Right down to the backpack, which is designer and probably worth $1,000. But he's got these 2 homemade bracelets on, and it almost looks like maybe a little kid made them, or like a Packer fan, or something homemade. It was really hard to tell, even sitting close to Sean. But we're talking about the way he prepares for kickoff, and he brought up that lighter, that cigarette lighter from the Vietnam War that has a quote on it. Although, walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I fear no evil, so I am the meanest SOB on the planet. I'm paraphrasing, but just how he gets his mind right to kick ass out there. There's a lot that goes into it, right down to listening to Taylor Swift, of course, on his pop playlist. But yeah, at one point, I'm just looking at his wrist like, Sean, what is that? And he said, oh, this here. And then I'm thinking it says something like inspirational, or, bubbly, or, something kind of playful, because it's a bunch of different colors and it's all threaded together with beads. And one says, fuck you. And one says, kill them all. I paused there for a second. I wasn't sure if I could swear, but
we'll bleep it. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it says. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, yeah, my girlfriend was making me some bracelets, asked what I wanted to say. I told her, F you, kill them all. And, some of the letters are turned backwards, and he said he kind of likes it, right? There's a ruggedness to it. And the only time he ever takes those bracelets off are for practices and games. Other than that, they're on his wrist all the time. It's his credo of sorts. Like, he just wants to go out there and maul people. And it really is a switch. I mean, he is a jovial, gentle giant of a personality. Anybody that's been around him, I'd imagine, would say the same thing. Very, very inquisitive, conscientious. He's into a lot of different things. He's a SoCal surfer, but he also is into crypto right now. He's looking at some investing there. When he gets on a flight, he's not looking at his screen. He's buying a magazine or a book. He wants to learn something. He's into podcasts and the human condition. There's a lot that goes into Sean Rhyan, but at the end of the day, when it gets closer to kickoff and he looks at that cigarette lighter and he plays a little Taylor Swift, and then he thinks about that cigarette lighter one more time, he goes out there to kill them all. And I'm sure we'll get into it, Pete, but that's what the Packers need. That's what they need. Every January,
it's funny because he is like that paradox. You can kind of feel the playfulness, but it is undergirded by, I don't want to say a darkness, because that is ascribing it, I think, too negative a connotation, but just there's an edge there that he exudes. And part of it is that he's just this massive dude. He doesn't look like the other guys on the offensive line. The body type, the play style. But what's interesting to me, Ty, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is after the Seahawks game, Chris Collinsworth mentioned Matt LaFleur told them one of the reasons why we give so many touches to Josh Jacobs early in these games is to set a tone, a physical tone. And for the longest time, going back to when you covered the team, there was a criticism of the Packers that in the postseason, and the worst, what is the worst word you can use to describe a football team? What is the meanest thing you can say about a football team? Soft. That was always the criticism. Sean Rhyan, Rasheed Walker, these dudes are not soft. And it seems like there has been an intentional shift here from the powers that be to say, we are not playing soft football anymore.
There have always been the occasional ass kicker trying to change everything that we think about the Green Bay Packers in January. Mike Daniels is right there, man. And we did a podcast last year. He really opened up on this and how much it drove him nuts to just see guys like Jermichael Finley, James Starks, running backs, receivers get knocked out and they do nothing about it. He's like, when are we going to punch somebody in the mouth? When are we going to change the narrative of the Green Bay Packers? And his voice would stand out in that locker room. Nobody talked in the same terms as Mike Daniels. On the offensive side, I think of TJ Lang. I mean, he brought some aggression. He brought some physicality, but it can't just be one guy, one voice. Man, you've got to be open to drafting somebody with an edge, somebody that's got a little something extra to him. That doesn't mean you need to, find somebody that's been arrested 5 times in college and,
or that they play dirty. Like, that's not what we're talking about.
Exactly. But when Sean Rhyan is speaking and he's dropping, F-bombs every other sentence, and he's talking about why he idolizes Richie Incognito, right? Like, I know Richie well. There's a reason he was voted the dirtiest player in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy took a baseball bat to his own Ferrari. There's a lot to Richie Incognito, but the fact that he would just tip of the tongue say, that's what I want to play like. I want to get under people's skin. They're going to know I'm there for 50, 60, 70 snaps a game. Like, the Packers really haven't sought that kind of player and valued that kind of player, in my opinion, in a long time. Right? But Sean Rhyan is going to play a certain kind of way out there, and there's a lot that goes into it. It's all in the story. I mean, he's watching film of Mike Tyson, not just the knockouts, but the way he trains, just that scowl in his eye, like the maniacal tenacity that he brings to a workout is what he wants to bring to a workout, which when he gets to those workouts, and his dad is a secret weapon. His dad deserves a book written on him. His life is unbelievable. International motocrosser at age 15. He's got a degree in exercise physiology. He was a police officer in San Diego.
Wow.
Unbelievable story. He's like his secret weapon. But as his trainer, as Sean's trainer, I mean, they're watching film of Werner Gunther, a Swiss Olympian who threw shot, and watch those training videos. Man, those are just as good as Mike Tyson's training videos. So my point is, like, there is a ton that goes into what we see on the field when it comes to Sean Rhyan in the trenches. But it does take Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst saying, like, we want this. We're not going to run for it. Yeah. And we're not going to look at it as like an inconvenience. No, we're going to take somebody who might get a penalty from time to time, who might say something from time to time, because guess what? That's what we need to win at the end of the year. And Matt LaFleur has really taken charge. This is his team now. This is year 2 removed from Aaron Rodgers. Like, when that quarterback leaves the building, now Matt LaFleur's voice gets louder inside of that building. And I feel like what you hear him say after the Miami game, right? He's talking about physicality, right down to receivers, the way they block. This is the kind of stuff you haven't heard Mike McCarthy and early Matt LaFleur say often. They want this. They want Sean Rhyan to be the tip of that spear.
Still more with Tyler Dunne to come here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holiday bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. When your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Jared Goff for more than 230 passing yards and Saquon Barkley for more than a touchdown. It's quick, it's simple, so much fun to challenge yourself and friends. Download the PrizePicks app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you place that first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. You got a lot of apps on your phone. Well, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. This is an easy win. Look, you pay $2.99 on an app, and if you're not really diligent about your bank statements, you might miss those. But $2.99 times 12 months, now we're talking about actual meaningful dollars. But if I could have 36 extra dollars, I might, take myself and have a drink, or, get a. This probably give me a t-shirt with as expensive as clothing prices have gotten. But look, that's real savings. What if I find 3 apps like that? Now it's 100. Now I've saved real money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I think it strikes me too that part of this is the organization, and maybe it's Matt LaFleur taking this, but him saying, I now know what I want this football team to be. Maybe he did when he arrived and couldn't for reasons related to the biggest personalities on that team. When you show up and you've got 2 future Hall of Famers on your side of the ball, the team is going to be a reflection of them. And that is not a criticism. I know people, will get mad at us because we're willing to criticize Aaron Rodgers about certain things. That's not even what I'm talking about. But I just mean Matt LaFleur now getting the opportunity to say, this is actually how I want to play football. And maybe it changing over time. Like we saw in LA, right? Sean McVay, all of a sudden that outside zone run that he became so famous for, they're running gap schemes, they're running duos, they're playing big boy football. And I think it's a credit to Matt LaFleur, but it does seem like he's getting an opportunity now to put his stamp on this in a way that maybe he didn't 2-3 years ago.
Totally. I mean, I know everybody hates it when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, but let's be real, man. He was the 4-time MVP. He was the loudest personality in the room in every possible way. He was given a seat at the table and how the roster is constructed after he held the team hostage those 3 months of 2021.
And the best thing he did for the team was give them Tom Clements, by the way, because Tom Clements has been a huge impact on Jordan Love.
That's such a good point, Peter. You're absolutely right. But I'm thinking of Matt LaFleur at that point, that offseason, his press conferences, begging, pleading, Aaron, come back. We need you. And for good reason, probably, right? Jordan Love isn't quite ready, in their opinion, to take over. Aaron Rodgers is off of an MVP season. Long-winded way of saying, yes, Aaron Rodgers was the one that had the most say in how the Green Bay Packers operated. And most of the time, that was a good thing. You're going to win 13 games. You're going to get to the playoffs. He's going to bring home some hardware. But guess what? Even if it's at Lambeau Field, you're going to get pushed around. You're going to get bullied. And he let them down at that point of the year, especially toward the end. Now, Matt LaFleur is that loudest voice in the room. Matt LaFleur is that biggest personality in the locker room. You can hear it in his voice in press conferences. You can see it in the post-game speeches inside the locker room. I mean, he does have an infectious personality himself, and he's bringing it to life on the field, right? It's one thing to say it. A lot of coaches can say the right thing. It's another to live it, breathe it, and punch somebody in the mouth 3 hours on a Sunday. And that's the way that they're playing football for the most part now. So, yeah, you do need a Sean Rhyan out there just driving people 3-4 yards downfield. And I think that, and I think I wrote this in the story too, if you're trying to get through like an evolutionary change, like it's Darwinian almost, like there's going to be some uncomfortable moments. And there's been times in practice where Sean Rhyan has played through that echo of the whistle, has hit a teammate a little too. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He doesn't. But Matt LaFleur wasn't happy about it and called him out in a meeting. But I think that they've kind of worked through those as a team, and they see like, look, even these practices got to be a little harder to get to where we want to get to. Hell, I remember those training camp practices when I was on the beat at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It felt Country Club would be a little strong. It was very quarterback friendly, very offense friendly. I've had defensive players tell me it bothered them how much Mike was just around the offense. That's where his attention is, right? And I get the argument. I mean, that is a historic offense, but there's got to be, to use the Mike McCarthy term, right? You get what you emphasize. If you're going to emphasize physicality, that's what you're going to get. And Matt LaFleur is putting his money where his mouth is.
I think it speaks volumes that this team, who drafts and develops offensive line better than anyone else in the league, I think they used a first-round pick on Jordan Morgan. And I know he's been hurt, but like Sean Rhyan kept him on the sidelines. Like that was a rotation for a little while. And I don't think even if Jordan Morgan stays healthy, if he ever takes that job from Sean Rhyan has played really well this year. I want to get you out of here on this side. This is as crowded as we have ever seen a division in the NFC North. It does give me some NFC Central vibes back when you had the Bucks and you had, the Warren Moon, Brad Johnson Vikings, and, the Bears played in that division too. But like those teams, it was a different world then. How do you try and make sense of the hierarchy in the NFC? Or is this going to be week to week? Like, this week, maybe it's the Eagles that are the best team. Next week, hey, maybe, who knows? Maybe it's the Vikings. Like, how do you make sense of all of this?
There's an opening for Green Bay, obviously, with the injuries in Detroit. I'm going to drive to Detroit this week, spend a few days with the Lions. But yeah, the fact that they're reaching into the Kmart DVD bin for Jamal Adams and Miles Adams and who in the hell else did they sign? I mean, it's a different way to build a team.
It's like Madden
through
generate a
injuries.
player names that are we're seeing pop up. It's like what is happening here?
Right. I mean, Allen Robinson's on your practice squad for a bit. Tim Patrick's on your practice squad. Now he's catching touchdowns.
Yeah, he's
on
actually
Sunday.
playing great for them.
Their resourcefulness is impressive. I mean, their pro scouting department. I always felt bad for like Elliott Wolf and the Packers pro department because you put in all this work and Ted is like, no,
yeah,
we're gonna give MD Jennings 800 snaps. Sorry, we're not gonna sign a vet to play this position. So it's a different way of doing business. So my point, like, we'll see how Detroit can handle the latest rash of injuries because Aleem McNeil just signed a $97 million contract. He is one of, if not the most disruptive defensive tackles in football. You lose him to the torn ACL. You lose Carlton Davis, who you traded for a physical man-to-man corner who brings Dan Campbell's rhetoric to life out there on the island. And now David Montgomery's out indefinitely. I mean, at what point is it one injury too many? This team is decimated.
Yeah.
Love Dan Campbell. And I love what he said today as we record this on a Tuesday, saying, we've been eating filet mignon. We got to remember what it's like. We had nothing. They're at that point. Well, I wouldn't count him out. But the Packers are the healthier team. They've got a clear identity, and they're bringing it to life on the field. I think they're getting hot at the right time. Jordan Love, we just saw him get hot at the right time last year. So you couple that with Josh Jacobs, everything they're doing on the ground. But I love Minnesota too. Like Sam Darnold
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
He's feeling it.
What's going on in Minnesota is truly remarkable. I was just texting with someone who's very plugged in league circles about this. And I was like, what do they do? I can't remember anything like this. And I think the closest situation, this is crazy to say, is the Chargers with Drew Brees when they had drafted Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees went out and played all pro level football and they ended up franchise tagging him and then he gets hurt and then you're able to transition. But like, I don't know what Minnesota's going to do. Like, what is the level at which you just say, how can we look at our players in the eye and say, we're going to start a rookie quarterback none of you have seen play? Because they're not going to have seen him, Ty. They're not going to see him play football until it's time to make a decision on Sam Darnold. And I don't know how you do that as a team. They've got some decisions to make, but we're not going to have to worry about that for another couple of weeks because we've got some awesome football coming up. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show. As always, I'm sure you'll be back very soon. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate you.
Thanks to Tyler for joining the show. Awesome to talk with him. As always, go check out Go Long, which is a great independent journalistic outlet, as The Leap is as well. And we got Evan Williams on the show on Friday. We'll have our crossover tomorrow. So a great week coming up as we get set for Packers Saints on Monday Night Football. Follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on all the social medias, Locked On Packers. They're on TikTok. I am not. And we're on YouTube. We'll be live after the game on Monday. Come hang out. You guys have been awesome on the post games this year. And even around the holidays, you've been riding strong with us. So come hang out, subscribe on YouTube so you can stay Locked On Packers.